So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Chase Clemons, who is a customer support team lead at Basecamp. Hi, Chase. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for the invite on the show.
You're very welcome. Now, Chase, for the benefit of our listeners and readers, can you tell us a little bit about you and a bit about the work that you do?
Absolutely. So, you first want to know about Basecamp. Basecamp,
Sure.
our product, is basically the better, calmer, and a little bit more organized way to manage the projects and basically communicate with your team and your company. So, instead of having like sticky notes all over the place and like files scattered around everywhere, use Basecamp, and it gives you that kind of one central place for your company. For me personally, I'm part of the customer support team here. I'm one of the team leads. And, if a customer needs help or has a question or even wants to talk through an idea about how to set something up in Basecamp, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help with that.
Perfect. Now, I've used Basecamp, and then I followed your progress. I also followed a lot of the writing and the books that Jason and David have published, which I think is brilliant because you guys take a very, very different approach to your business, which we'll get into a little bit later on. But the thing I wanted to kick off the conversation today was that I learned earlier this year that your CEO, Jason Fried, that is assuming personal responsibility for all customer refunds. And when I first read that, I was like, what? I was like, whoa, that's new, that's cool. So first of all, before we get stuck into that, can you give us a bit of background of where that come from and the sort of level of churn that you guys are facing? Because that gives us a bit of a quantum in terms of what's going to fall back on him potentially.
Sure. So yeah, that was kind of the first first thing I thought when Jason announced this. Basically, just for a little background, Jason kind of came up with this idea, this experiment, being personally responsible for refunds that our customers needed. There's a famous little sign that used to be on the President Harry Truman's desk that said, "The buck stops here."
Right.
And Jason, kind of saw that and had it in his background. He was like, you know what, maybe refunds, that does stop with me. So if a customer is unhappy with Basecamp, maybe it just didn't work for them, maybe they couldn't get their team to use it, whatever the reason, we'll just send them the refund. Jason kind of put it this way to us. He said, we didn't make them happy, and since Jason's the CEO, ultimately, that's his responsibility. The buck stops with him on that kind of thing. So yeah, all that to say, when he first shared the idea with us, my first thought was, wow, I wonder how much that's going to be. At the end of the year, how much money are we talking about?
Yeah.
Because he's a CEO. I didn't want him to take a huge hit kind of thing.
Sure.
But it's turns the cost tiers the cost of a small car over the course of a year. So it's not like a make or break kind of money.
But it's noticeable.
Yeah, it's noticeable, and it's definitely one of those you'll feel at the end of the year.
Sure. Particularly if somebody you've already bought the small car and somebody comes along and actually takes it away.
Exactly. You pay for it, and then all of a sudden the repo company shows up one day and you're like, "Hey, where's my car?"
And they were like, "Yeah, we're the refund collection agency." Anyway. So that's great. I get that, and I did some background research, and I did see that little picture with a sign with a buck stops here on the desk of the president, and I went, "Oh, that's really interesting." But it's all very well making that commitment, but how does it actually work in practice? What's actually kind of changed in the business with the sort of the implementation of this?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the cool things. With Basecamp, we really like to keep things simple, and that applies to not having a bunch of overhead policies about what we can and can't do when it comes to customers. So practically speaking, nothing has really changed for our support team in the way that we handle refunds. Okay. If a customer wrote in the day before Jason announced that idea, they would get a refund versus the day after. It was just very much our support team makes the call on when to do a refund, and we were pretty much, we were kind of doing this already. It's just that the company was bearing the cost of the refund rather than Jason himself bearing the cost of the refund. So, technically speaking, practically speaking, not a lot changed. The only thing that'll be different is end of the year, we'll tally up the refunds, and Jason will write a check back to the company.
Okay. I mean, that makes me think, if nothing's actually kind of changed technically in terms of how the team's responded or how the team has done anything differently, I mean, so is it more of just a statement of intent, and that's just all part of Jason, how he goes about, managing and leading kind of Basecamp, or is it become part of the company's identity, or help me understand kind of what the sort of the why, as it were.
Yeah, I think that, and I can't speak for Jason on like his personal why, but I think for the support team and for the company, it was we were pretty much like doing this already, but it's a difference when you like stand up and publicly announce it and say, this is the standard that we're going to have.
Right.
This is what we're going to do, and then your customers can look at that and go, oh, like it. You can do all these things on the back end,
yes.
Like if a customer doesn't end up using Basecamp, you can do a refund and they'll be happy. But it's a little bit different when somebody is looking at Basecamp and thinking about it, and then they see a kind of like a statement like Jason has made and go, yeah, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try Basecamp because I know if it doesn't work, then Jason's got my back. Basecamp has my back. They're not going to charge me just to try this.
Right, so it's like it's not hiding behind the company. It's like doing something which is this is my company. I believe in it, and therefore it's like standing out in front and going, "That's it. It's on me." So it's more of a statement than anything else.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, but then when I read about it and I read about what Jason had said and what he's going to do and things, and he was talking about it's the CEO's responsibility, then it just made me think, but really, is it just the CEO's responsibility, or is it ultimately everyone's responsibility? I mean, so that might be feels like slightly kind of challenge or possibly contrary kind of question, but it'd be interesting to get your take on that, given that you're the customer support team lead, or you're kind of you co-team lead with your colleague. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you actually think that these sort of issues are like everybody's responsibility, and actually over time maybe everybody will step up and go, yeah, it's on us? Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, ultimately, it's on Jason. Jason is Jason and David are the founders of the company, our CEO and CTO. They're the ones that set the direction, and everything ultimately does stop with them.
Yeah.
But it's a lot like, with President Truman, he had the sign on his desk, and ultimately it did stop with him. But his staff worked to accomplish the goals that he laid out as part of his presidential agenda.
Right.
And the same thing happens with us. It's Jason and David set the direction, and they're ultimately going to be responsible for that. But a big part of all of this for the support team is working and making sure to accomplish what they lay out. And that means making sure our customers are happy, loving using Basecamp, doing what we can, whether it's, helping them roll it out to their team or helping take their ideas back to our team, doing whatever we can to make sure it works. So we all have our own little part to play in all of this. But I think ultimately, it does stop with Jason. It does stop with David.
Excellent. So moving away from that sort of that issue, I mean, I know that, so I've known about Basecamp and the work that you do, and I've used the products and things, and I think I just love kind of a lot of the stuff that you do. But you've also been listed as one of Forbes' small giants, I think, for like the last 2 years actually, which is this list that Forbes puts together, which is 25 companies that they identify, predominantly US companies, I believe, that value what they say greatness over growth, and that sort of epitomizes sort of Basecamp and your products and services, because there's a lot of buzz and a lot of people kind of talking about you. So there's sort of two different things I want to ask you about. There's a lot of people talking about Basecamp, and you do a lot of talking and explaining about how you do things, but can you give me an insider's kind of like look and feel kind of in terms of what it's like to work for Basecamp? Because a lot of people talk about it and aspire to it. It's a bit like people talking about Zappos and Amazon and all these sort of things. So it's kind of interesting and useful to get a look under the bonnet, as it were.
Yeah, I can tell you 100% that's my dream job.
Okay.
Like one of the best things is we're an entirely remote company, which means I get to work for Basecamp, for this great company, while still living on my family farm down here in southern Tennessee.
Right.
So that's huge. There's no company around here. Like if I had to go into an office and work every day, there's no company around where I live that is like Basecamp. My commute every morning is literally just going down the hallway, making sure not to trip over the dogs as I walk. So like this remote aspect is so fantastic, and it's great that it's built into our culture too. It's you hear about remote companies and they might have like some people remote, some people working in an office, and for those companies, it's really hard for the remote people to stay in the loop on things because people have like lunch conversations about work, and that's not shared with the rest of the remote team. So we're really fortunate that this remote culture has been baked into Basecamp from the very beginning. So we're able to work from wherever we want and not have a fear of missing out on things or missing key information that we need, which is great. I also love that I get to work with some of the smartest people that I know.
Right.
The thought and attention that goes into every part of Basecamp, whether it's Basecamp the company or Basecamp the product, it's absolutely incredible. Our designers will sit there and work through 5 or 6 different designs for this little part of a page until they get to the one that is the cleanest and simplest and easiest to understand for a customer. Our developers and programmers, the code that they write is almost, it sounds cheesy, but it's so well written. It's almost like reading a story or reading poetry. And that's one where you just don't see that level of care and attention in lots of other companies out there. So it's great to have that too. And yeah, like I said, it's my dream job. This is the best company I've ever worked for, and one that I hope to get to work for the next 15, 20 years.
Fantastic. I mean, but explain to me, Chase, so you've got roughly about 50 people, but they're based in about 30 different locations around the world. Is that right? And
yeah, there's since Basecamp came out of Chicago, Jason lives up there. There's about 10 or so folks that live in Chicago that have the option to go into our office there, but for the most part, the office is usually pretty empty unless it's like times for company retreats and things.
Okay. So it's the company's not like 100% remote. You actually bring people together on a regular basis, because I guess if you've got people in 30 different locations around the world, then time zones is going to become a bit of an issue as well in terms of connecting everybody.
Yeah, time zones can be, and there's kind of so for the support team, we love having time zones because that means we can do 24/7 support without people having to work like weird overnight hours.
Okay.
And one of the kind of the beauties here is that with time zones, the way that like our support team has 3 big chunks to it. It has a U.S. team, a EU team, and then a Australia-Asia team.
Right. So
everybody kind of has at least 3 to 4 hours of overlap with one other team. So when I'm starting my day here in the States, I've got about 3 or 4 hours overlap with our EU team. Right. And then the people that live on the West Coast here in the States have a 3 or 4 hour overlap with our Australia Asian team. So we use time zones to our advantage, especially here on the support team. And for the most part, like our team has those overlap hours in there where they can like do calls or live chats or whatever they need to with other people working on the team. So we've got that, but for the most part, our work is pretty asynchronous. If you're working on a design for a new feature, you kind of wrap up the design part of it, and then you can pass it over to the programmer for the programming side of things. And it doesn't matter really where you are in the world for that. The work is there in Basecamp, and the work is going to be able to get done. So
right, and so I guess, given you work across time zones, that's you're talking about that fits really, really well with your, if you like, your service model, because I guess it's a bit like a relay race. I mean, it seems like you've got like teams, and it's almost you're passing the baton round, and people are managing ongoing kind of queries or issues and things. So is that how it works? It's just like one time zone passing the baton on to another time zone.
Yeah, pretty much. So we're close to 24/7 support. There's a few hours that are open on the weekend that we've got a couple of people training for to fill those.
Okay.
So we're close, except for those couple of hours. But yeah, it's basically these handoffs between different teams.
Okay.
So this morning when I started work around 9:00 Central Time, I was able to kind of read back through what's going on with the rest of the team, because we use the campfire chats in Basecamp and the message board in Basecamp to let people know what's going on.
Right.
And then, we go in and I'll work my shift today. And once I get finished up, we'll kind of hand the baton over to the Australia Asia team. So yeah, it's a relay at the end of the day. It's one where you're not trying to run a sprint. You're not trying to get the fastest time possible. You're trying to, set up your schedule and the way that we work for the long haul, for the marathon, for the relay race.
And so how does it work? I mean, I think that makes sense in terms of, responding to, customer queries and issues and so on and so forth. But how does it work when you gather feedback from your customers and analyze it and then generate ideas and turn these into actionable items and get things done? I mean, how does that work when you've got this remote team? Does it work in a sort of similar sort of way, or how do you deal with those sort of that sort of customer engagement and communication and around the sort of development cycle, as it were?
Yeah, so we it's in Basecamp, of course. We have a project there in Basecamp called Voice of the Customer. And
Right.
It's basically where we keep different customer ideas and suggestions, basically the things that customers are asking for.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll go in, and anytime somebody emails us or sends us a tweet with an idea or brings one up in a phone call that we might happen to be on, wherever it comes from, we start a text document in that project and kind of outline the details for it. What situation the customer was in at the time, what problem they ran into, what they were trying to get Basecamp to do, and ultimately what their idea was and how their idea might work. So we're basically keeping track of all of that in a project inside Basecamp. And when we do that, that lets us kind of have this library almost of customer ideas and customer voice that we can then give to the design team, give to the product team, and when they start working on this new idea, say they're working on they're working to make the client side better in this cycle that we're on, we're able to offer up these basically recordings and interviews and things with customers that are around that topic. So they're not, the development team at that point is not just trying to guess at what the problem is and how to solve it. They know what the problem is.
Right.
They've got this customer voice right there with them, kind of outlining what's going on. So yeah, that's kind of, with us, it's all about getting that customer's voice out of our support inbox, out of the queue, and getting it into Basecamp where people can see it and use it.
Okay. And going back to that kind of queue, I mean, I was kind of, before I came on this, I was just having a look around and things. And I know that a lot of companies now are talking about kind of multi-channel, omni-channel sort of service and things. But it seems that, but it strikes me that actually your approach is that you're actually only operating in 2 or 3 different channels, if that. And is that a conscious decision because it's better to manage that, or kind of what's the thinking behind it? Is that just the way that the Basecamp best operates, or is that a choice that we were going to be great in 1 or 2 channels?
Yeah, that's a conscious choice. Because think about it. When a company tries to cover every channel out there, it's tough.
Yeah.
Say like the ones you mentioned. So say we're going to do email, then we're going to do phone support, we're going to do live chat, then we're going to do Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and then we're going to do maybe even like video chats like Amazon's doing. Yeah. When you do that, that means you got to have a big team, especially if you want to do it 24/7 like we're doing.
Sure.
We don't want a big team. You like being a small company, and when you make that choice, that means making trade-offs.
Right.
So our support team has decided we want to stay a small team, which means we need to focus on being really great at a couple of things that we can do really well. So we pick email as the primary because everyone knows how to send an email, right? Like my 4-year-old niece knows how to send an email at this point. So we can focus on that. It gives customers a way to communicate with us that doesn't require them learning like how to file a ticket or open up something or whatever, right? Yeah. And ultimately, we get to stay small as a team. Our support team has 14 people on it,
right?
And we get to kind of keep that small size, and we get to still offer that 24/7 support. And on top of that, we get to do pretty quick replies out to our customers because we're focusing on being really good at a couple of things versus being so at like a bunch.
Yeah. I mean, so have you had any pushback from your customers on basically taking a position and then promising to be great at just a couple of channels rather than trying to be average or as you say at a bunch?
Every now and then we'll run across a customer who just prefers talking on the phone or has a situation that they would feel more comfortable talking on a phone call at that point. And so they'll email us and be like, hey, can we jump on a phone call real quick? And we will.
Yeah.
We'll just pick up the phone and call them real quick. But even when we do things like that, I think it's a better experience than like having a 1-800 number to call than be stuck on a queue with cheesy elevator music, while you wait for somebody. So, every now and then, maybe once a week, I'll see a customer that prefers, asking a question on the phone or would rather have like a live chat or something like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, for 99% of our customers, the email it works great.
Yeah. Another thing I saw when I was I was digging around, I saw on the support page there was like an estimated response time, and I think when I looked at it, it was at 6 minutes. That sort of reminded me of the when I've been in other queues, or you're like waiting in the train station and you've got the countdown of when the train's coming. It's like, oh, it's 5 minutes away, or it's 3 minutes away, or 2 minutes away, and it sort of that makes the wait shorter. I mean, is that a standard that you aspire to, or is that a dynamic changing time?
Yeah, that's a dynamic changing time. So like right now at 9:29 Central Time on May 24th, our response time is about 7 minutes.
Okay.
So it shifts through the day. It's a rolling average of our response time over the last couple of hours.
Yeah.
So it's not like, what we've done in the last hour. It's more like if you look at the last couple of hours, like what's our average been? So that number changes based on what's going on, what our support team, like what our coverage is looking like that day. If it's a weekend, our weekend crew is a little bit smaller than our weekday crew, so the times are going to be a little bit longer. So we aim for response times within like 30 minutes or so.
Right.
That's kind of the goal. But, it's always better to, kind of under promise, over deliver, as they say. So, we say 7 minutes right now. If you emailed us right now, it might be like 2 minutes.
Okay.
So that average kind of, gives us that flexibility to tell customers what that expected response time is, so they get that kind of, like you mentioned, that the wait doesn't seem as bad. And, we get that without like holding ourselves to, it has to be exactly like 7 minute replies.
Right. Okay. I mean, and that sort of replying within 20, 30 minutes, is that a standard you aspire to, or is that a target, or is it just a measure that you kind of use to see how you're doing?
Yeah, so it's one that we kind of aspire to is probably the right word there. It's definitely like we're not going to freak out if we go over that kind of time limit.
Okay.
It's just kind of like one of those kind of goals that we've kind of set to just kind of guide ourselves. So we know, I mean, for the most part, it's all about staffing for us.
Yes.
If we're looking at like hour-long replies, then maybe that tells us we need another person on the team.
Sure.
So it's more that kind of internal thing. It's not like anybody makes more money if we do less than 30 minutes, or that we get, other compensation or anything like that. It's there as kind of a benchmark for us. So
it doesn't drive the wrong type of responses or behaviors or whatever if it becomes a target.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, you think about, people that are sitting in call centers that have to keep their call times under a certain amount.
Yeah.
Then when you do that, you don't get, the customer experience goes down,
yes.
Right? Because it's all about numbers. It's not about the customer.
Mm-hmm.
For us, what's really interesting is we did have early last year, we were shooting for like 3 to 4 minute replies. Basically, we want to be as fast as we could possibly be. And when you have that mindset, things change. For us, it wasn't that customers were getting a better or worse experience. For us, it was the team experience. It was, we're going to hit this number, and if that means I have to work a little bit longer or do extra work or things like that, then that's what we're going to do. And that can lead to burnout. That can lead to low team morale. It can cause these cultural problems inside the team. Customers, it doesn't really affect them as much. It's more about that team feeling. So we've kind of backed off on that starting late last year, and kind of, we shoot for 30 minutes. That's kind of our goal, but it's one of those where if it goes beyond that, we're nothing bad is going to happen. Yeah,
you'll maybe just keep an eye on it and then kind of watch it and figure out what the underlying causes are.
Exactly. If it's, if we're over 30 minutes consistently for like a month or two, then that maybe we need to bring on somebody else to the team.
Okay. And related to the service sort of thing, I saw something else which I thought was just quite fun. Can you tell me a little bit, because it's all related to service and self-service, but can you tell me about your move to what's called yes AQs rather than just having FAQs on your website?
Yeah, so that came out of a few years back. Jason was driving down the road up in Wisconsin, I think, and basically went through a toll booth and saw this piece of paper that an employee had printed up with a list of basically common questions that they got all the time that all had the same answer of yes.
Yeah.
So we kind of like saw that. It was really novel. It was really fun, kind of a refreshing take on those kind of boring FAQs where it's like you list out every single question and then put an answer right under it, right?
Yeah.
Especially if the answer is yes, a lot of them. So we we stole that idea pretty much and put it on the website. And so we do these yes FAQs, and it has questions like, can I reply to Basecamp messages via email? Or can I set up projects that only some of my team can see? Those are yes answers to both of those.
Yeah.
So we have, the yes FAQ with the yes answer at the top, and then a list of questions where every single answer is yes. And it's fun. It's different. It's a little bit, a little novel, a little refreshing. And at the end of the day, it still provides information to customers in a really easy to understand form, which I think was the big benefit from it.
Fantastic. So, I mean, Chase, I know that you've probably got to get back to your team and things, but couple final questions. So, what's the next big thing for you guys at Basecamp? What's the next big challenge for service and support? I mean, what are you kind of handling next? I mean, is it that you're moving from reactive to proactive, or you're going to take on more channels or more teams or more sophistication? What's the next big thing for you guys?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two big areas that I'm working with a team on. The first being those feature requests that we were talking about earlier, that voice of the customer.
Right.
We want to get better at those. We want to make, basically it's all about context and detail. Like how much detail can we get out to give to the product team? Because the more complete picture we can paint for them, the better it's going to be. So we've been using some techniques from this research theory called jobs to be done.
Yes.
So basically you kind of go in and talk to a customer as close to the point of the problem as you can and kind of get them to build you a timeline of like this happened, then this happened, and I tried to use Basecamp for this and it didn't work, so I sent you an email with my idea in it.
Right.
That timeline there is really, really beneficial to get to the core of what's going on. So we're kind of playing with ways to kind of bring that jobs to be done philosophy into the customer support world, which is really, really cool, really interesting, fun for me anyways.
Yes.
And then we're also looking at live chat. It's not one that we have figured out yet, because again, we want to keep the team size small. We want to make it controllable. At any given moment, a person can handle 2 to 3 different chats with 2 to 3 different customers.
Yeah.
That number, that's a pretty hard and set number. It's not like an email where you can work with, an infinite number more of people than you can with chat. So we want to figure out how we can offer live chat, but offer it in the right way for customers and the right way for our team, which is the kind of challenge that we're working through. So, we're taking baby steps in that direction. So I think those are the kind of the big two that I'm really interested in right now.
Fantastic. So Chase, I've got a couple of final questions. I mean that's really interesting stuff. But I got a couple of final questions that I always ask at the end of these interviews, and that they're both. First one's quite selfish. Because I wrote a book last year called How to Wow, but what I've been doing is over the course of the last year, I've been asking people for their perspective on what wow service or wow experience kind of is for them. So I'd really be interested to hear your take on that.
Yeah. So I think for me, at the end of the day, a wow kind of experience is getting a human reply, but getting it at the right time.
Right.
So like the kind of example I like to use is if I'm just trying to check my bank account balance, I don't really need to talk to another person. Like I don't need to call somebody up and have them tell me a number. I just need a nudge in the right direction to where I can find that information. Right. So if it's a help guide or a little, I don't know, like a little chat bot or something like that, it doesn't really matter. Like I don't need to talk to a person for that. Now, compare that to if my debit card stops working one morning, and I had this happen. My debit card stopped working at 3 a.m. one morning when I was on a road trip, and I was trying to fill up my car with some gas. and my debit card just didn't work. So I needed to talk to an actual real life person right then who had the power to fix that.
Yeah.
Thankfully, like with my bank, I was able to call them up and, got a real human on the line within a couple of minutes, and it was perfect. I got that human reply at the right time that I needed it.
Right.
So it's the wow there is getting that human service, but getting it at the right time, which I think is really critical.
Excellent. And then my final question, which I always ask at the end of these interviews, is this. Chase, is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
Well, I mean, since you did the book, that seems fair.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I would shamelessly plug Basecamp. Go check us out, basecamp.com. Especially for any of you owners or managers or kind of team lead small businesses out there, I'll put it this way. Your work will get better when you use Basecamp. It's that simple. It's so easy to use, and it's such a big boost that I recommend it all the time. I'd recommend Basecamp even if I didn't work here. So go check it out, basecamp.com.
Chase, thank you very much. I'll make sure I get that all linked up and give you guys a big shout out at Basecamp. But I just want to say thank you for giving us the inside scoop on what goes on at Basecamp and what service and experience means for you guys over there. I think you're doing a great job. I think you're rightfully listed in the Small Giants list. You are leading the way in a number of different ways across Basecamp, and I just want to say thank you for your sharing with us your time and insight today. That's been great.
Yeah, my pleasure, and thanks again for the invite. It's fun. It's been fun.